Thank you very much. I'm here in the music school today, and I'm so thankful to hear this music performance. Let's start our lectures on the book of Acts. Today we'll read Acts chapter 19, verse 11.
하나님이 바울의 손으로 희한한 능을 행하게 하시니 심지어 사람들이 바울의 몸에
And God wrought special miracles by the hands of Paul, so that from his body were brought unto the sick handkerchief or aprons, and of the diseases departed from them, and evil spirits went out of them. Then certain of the vagabond Jews, exorcists, took upon them to call over them which had evil spirits at the name of the Lord Jesus, saying, We adjure you by Jesus whom Paul preacheth. And there were 7 sons of one Sceva, a Jew, a chief of the priests, which did so. And the evil spirit answered and said, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are ye? And the man in whom the evil spirit was leaped on him, and overcame them, and prevailed against them, so that they fled out of that house, naked and wounded. And this was known to all the house, all the Jews and Greeks also dwelling at Ephesus, and fear fell on them all, and the name of Lord Jesus was magnified, and many that believed came and confessed and showed their deeds. Many of them also which used curious arts brought their books together and burnt them before all men, and they counted the price of them and found it 50,000 pieces of silver. So mightily grew the word of God and prevailed. After these things were ended, Paul purposed in the Spirit, when he had passed through Macedonia and Achaia, and to go to Jerusalem, saying, After I have been there, I must also see Rome.
하나님께서 우리 속에 행하는 일들을 생각합니다.
As we believe Jesus, when we see how God works among our lives, I'm so thankful about it. I oftentimes talked about it, but
남경현 목사님이
Pastor Kyunghyun Nam,
댕기 피부 거의 죽어가고 있어요.
he was dying of dengue fever.
남경현 목사님 필리핀에서 있는데
He's in Philippines now.
남경현 목사님한테 올리브 전화했는데
Today I called him because I had to talk about. One day I called him and because I wanted to ask him something, and his son picked up the phone, and I told him to pass the phone to his father. Then he said his father was hospitalized. I asked him why. He said his father had dengue fever.
열대는 댕기 피부라는
In tropical area, they have this dengue fever, which is very dangerous disease. Most of the people who catch this disease, they would die. Pastor Kyunghyun Nam, once he visited a village in jungle, he preached the gospel there, and when he came back, and after one day, when he came back, his skin got darker,
빈혈 있는 사람 혈색이 별로 안 보여요.
and those so
피부 뒤에 자주 피의 색깔이
so actually under the skin, you can see the color of the blood. So sometimes you can see the color of the blood through on them, but he got darker. And actually, they saw that color on him because back then because of dengue fever, his blood began to spoil. And in the hospital, they said that he has no possibility of surviving that disease. So in Filipino language, the doctor said, "Oh, this Korean is gonna die this afternoon."
남경현 목사님 선교사
But Pastor Nam Kyung-un, he knew the Filipino language, and he heard that, he understood that Filipino language, so he was dying.
내가 이제 필리핀에 전화하니까
And when I called Philippines,
아들이 받는데
the son of Pastor Nam answered the phone, and I asked him to pass him the phone. Then said his father was hospitalized. I asked him where he was. Then he said he was hospitalized in medical center.
교환으로 필리핀을 불렀어.
So I
필리핀 교환을 메디컬 센터
so I called Philippines, and I requested them to contact me to medical center.
응급실을 의사들이 ICU
And intensive care unit, in abbreviation, is called ICU. So I asked for ICU, then they passed me to ICU. And I said, please pass me to Korean missionary Nam. Then Pastor Nam Kyung-his wife answered the phone. Hello, she said. And when I said hello, Pastor Nam's wife recognized my voice, and she began to cry. She began to burst into tears. Oh, Pastor, what do we do now? What do we do now?
이게 남 목사님도 그렇고
So Pastor Nam, and even in her heart, and even in Pastor Nam's heart, already she was dead. He was dead. So when we face certain problems in our lives, Satan would always put our heart into difficulties.
행복을 집어넣으면 행복이 오고
And when you put happiness in your heart, happiness would come into your heart. If you put joy in your heart would come to joy.
여러분의 마음속에 불행한 일이 막 상상이 되도록 사탄은 역사를 하는데
So Satan will work in your heart.
그냥 받아들이지 말고 딱 바꾸는 거예요.
But if you just accept it in your heart,
예수님은 그런 것들이 굉장히 놀랍게 작용을 해요.
and that will work amazingly in your heart.
사모님이 딱 전화
Pastor Nam's wife, as soon as she answered the phone, when she heard my voice, she burst into tears and she said, "Oh, Pastor, what do we do now? What do we do now?
우리 우리가 어떻게 해야
Oh,
돼?
Pastor, what do we do now? What do we do now?
하긴 순교
What do you mean? What do we do now? You can keep on doing the ministry."
죽은 거예요.
So which means in her heart already, Pastor Nam was dead.
사모님 울지 말아요.
Please don't cry. But she kept on crying.
울어요. 진짜 울 일 생기면 좋겠어요.
But why do you cry? You want something to cry for happen? Actually, Pastor Nam's not gonna die. I'm telling you.
그럴까요?
Do you think so?
그럴까요가
What do you mean? Do you think so?
남경유 목사를 누가 필리핀
Who sent Pastor Nam to Philippines?
굿뉴스 미션이
Is it Good News Mission? Or is it Pastor Ock Soo Park? It's God who sent him there.
뭘 하러 보냈지요?
Why did he send him there? To preach the gospel, right?
필리핀의 보험 전환이 끝났어요.
Is the work of preaching the gospel over in Philippines? No, we just began there. So it's not gonna die.
그럴까요?
Do you think so? Oh, what do you mean? Do you think so? He's not gonna die. I'm telling you.
전화를 끊었어요.
And he hung up.
사모님 와서 남 목사님한테 얘기했어요.
And she went to tell Pastor Nam, "Oh, honey, I just got a phone call from Pastor Park," and she couldn't tell him.
사람이 제일 마지막까지 살아있는 뭔지 아세요? 기라고.
But you know, the last part of the human body that stays alive, I heard that's the ear, which means even if they cannot speak, they can still hear things. Although he could not talk anymore, but as his wife began to explain what I had told her, she began to explain that to him. And as soon as he heard that, the fever began to go down. And the following day, he was totally healed and he was discharged from the hospital.
저는 이런 경우를 굉장히 많이
I experienced that many times in my life.
그러니까 이제 사탄 우리 속에 절망적인 생각을 넣으면 대부분 사람 절망적인 생각을 빠져
So most people in the church,
포기를 하고
they give up when they see despair in their lives. And as they preach the gospel, there are people from time to time who run away.
이유는 간단해요.
The reason is clear.
복음을 전해 이 복음
As we preach the gospel, this gospel is so amazing and mysterious, and God works through it.
요셉 같은 경우
Like people like Joseph, look,
요셉이 어릴 때
when Joseph was young, when he had a dream,
자기가 곡식단을 배면 자기 곡식단 일어서고 형님
And-
곡식단 절하더라. 그런 이야기를
and in his dream, the bundle of his crabs stood up, but the bundles of his brother began to bow down to his bundle. Does it make sense? You said our bundle will bow down to your bundle?
또 어제 밤에 꿈꾼 좀 이야기를 했어.
Then Joseph said, "Oh, last night I had a dream."
깨달았나?
Oh,
얘기해봐.
so he said he had a dream last night. Okay, tell us what the dream you had yesterday. Oh, 11 stars and sun and moon, they bow down to me.
이게 대목지 않았네.
You're saying nonsense, you.
해와 달과 이람들이
You mean sun and moon and 11 stars bow down to you? Does that mean we're all going to bow down to you? Do you think it makes sense?
형들이 미워가지고
So the brothers, they hated him, and they sold him,
20개.
paying two pieces of silver.
그 가나안에서 이집트까지
So from Canaan to Egypt, he was taken to Canaan of Egypt. So he went to Canaan in Egypt, and the chief of the guards of the king, the chief of the guard, Potiphar, Potiphar bought him, paying 20 pieces of silvers.
그리고 보디발이 보니까 요셉이 굉장히 똑똑하고 잘하니까
Because when Potiphar saw him, he was so good, and Potiphar chose Joseph as the secretary of the house.
보디발은 늘 바빠서
But Potiphar saw him, and he was always outside. He was busy because he was busy.
보디발의 아내가 자꾸
But Potiphar's wife kept on tempting Joseph.
이유 없이 돌아라 그러고
She kept calling Joseph to come in and talk.
바로 저 나한테 같이 자자고
And one day she called Joseph to lay with her, but Joseph declined her request. I'm like one of the highest person in this house other than the master.
어떻게 감히
But how dare can I sin against before God, in God's presence? How can I lay with you?
그 여자가 막 요셉의 옷을 벗기려고 하면서
And she was trying to undress, strip him, but Joseph took off his clothes and he ran away.
도망하니까 여자가 뭐냐 막
And as soon as Joseph ran away, the Potiphar's wife shouted out and say, "Oh, catch the man!" And when people came, then she said, "Oh, Joseph tried to rape me." And when I screamed, that he ran away. She said.
그래가지고 남편이 와서 그 여자 남편
When the husband came, when Potiphar's wife told him that, they put him in the prison where they kept the prisoners of the king.
전 로마서를 읽으면서
As I read the book of Romans,
로마서 8장이 무슨 말씀을
let's see Romans chapter 8. Let's see Romans chapter 8.
로마서 8장에 이런 말씀이 있어요.
In Romans chapter 8, there is this word.
28절
Romans chapter 8, verse 28.
우리가 알거니와 다시 읽어볼
Let's read it all together. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose.
모든 것이 합력하여 선을 이루는다. 예, 우리가 알거니와
Yes.
하나님을 사랑하는 자 곧 그 뜻대로 부르심을
It says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose.
근데 우리가 볼 때 어떨 때는
So in our eyes,
선이야.
is it good? So sometimes we wonder.
근데 하나님 꼭 그래서 선한 일을 이끌어 나가요.
But God, He would always
그래 요셉이
do good things through those situations.
불행한 일이
Joseph being sold by his brothers, it's something unhappy, and being a slave to Potiphar, that's something unhappy. And he was doing great in the house, but because Potiphar's wife tempted him, and he was falsely accused, and he went to prison.
저는 제가 지금까지 살아오면서
As I live my life,
어려운 일도 많고 힘든
there were in
일도
times of difficulties, in times of hardship, but always
해주시고
God helped me preach the gospel, and I'm so thankful to God for that.
제가 김천에 있을 때 돈이 하나도
When I was in Gimcheon, I had no money at all.
우리가 20만 원을 주고 전세로 좋은 집을
We were paying $200. We got a house on deposit base, but the owner of the house made loan on his house, and he ran away because he couldn't pay back the loan. And we had paid $200 for the deposit base, but as he made a loan out of his house, and we almost had to be kicked out of the house.
잘 모릅니다. 이 집은 이제 은행의 것입니다.
One day, the bank manager came to our house and said, "Oh, Mr. Park, do you know what? From today on, this house will be this bank that owns this house. So you have to empty this house. You have to move out of this house." And I didn't have any other way. One day I was praying. I prayed to God, and God gave me the heart in me that God gave me a heart in me that don't just pray, but go see, go ask, go look for house in front of your house. The house you went the other time. And I went to this place, which was 2 stories building. And the house was so good for us to use.
그리고 세가 얼마 이렇게 전세로 20만 원 달라.
And they requested $200 for the deposit base
굉장히 큰 돈이에요.
amount of money. Back then, $200 was such a big amount of money. Back then, I didn't have any money.
그냥 아무 말 하고 나왔어요.
And I just came out
기도를 했는데
because they requested $200.
좀 지났는데
But about 3 months later,
기도란 너 지난번에
as I was praying,
보냐?
it seemed like God was asking me, "Oh, what about the house you saw the other day? Oh, it was so good. It must have been, taken by someone by now." But when I went out, it was still on rent.
안에 들어가니까 아이들만 있고
But when I went in, there was no adult. There was only, kids.
어디 가시냐?
So I asked if there's an adult, and they said they were all gone. And I told them to tell their parents that I will be coming back in the evening.
그때 제가 이제 한 25살이나쯤 됐어요.
I think back then I was only about 25 years old,
26살쯤.
maybe 25, 26 years old.
그러나 50대 20대 초반이었어요.
I was in my early 50s.
제가 이야기를 했습니다.
I said,
저 집 때문에 왔는데
I came for the house, I said.
어떤 삶이에요?
Oh, you're the one who came this morning? Yes, I'm the one.
저는 하나님의 종입니다.
I'm a servant of God.
이 김천이란 도시에 복음을
In this place called Kimcheon, I came here to preach the gospel.
시민한 사람 나에게 해를
But one of the citizens in this city, he damaged me. We went to his house on deposit base, but he made a loan out of his house.
대출에 쓰고 안 갖고 그
But he spent the money, but he didn't pay back. So this house was now the bank owns this house.
내가 집을 위해 기도했는데
And I was praying for the house,
이 집을 주시겠다는 말.
and God gave me the heart that He was going to give me this house.
저는 돈이 없는데
But I have no money.
주시면 좋겠어요.
But if you could give us this house, that would be great. If not, you have no other choice. So if someone hears me say that, it is something crazy, right? It's not something ordinary that people would say. Who would like to, rent a house? Who would try to rent a house without having the money? So the owner of the house, with his eyes closed,
한참 동안 있다 주인께서 눈을 뜨셨어요.
he thought about it, and after a while, he opened his eyes and said,
지자동에 있는 지자교회 장
"I'm an elder of Jija Church in Jijadong here in the downtown.
하나님이
God
국도변이 이렇게 좋은 그
God gave me this nice house by the road,
하나님의 종이 쓰시는데 내가
and the man of God wants to use it. So what should I say about it? How can I reject that?
들어와 사십시오.
Please come in and live here."
근데 그때 장로님 따님이 여자 고등학교 다니는 학생인데
Back then, the daughter of the elder was a girl student, was going to girls' high school,
꼭 하늘나라 와 있던 기분이에요.
and she was playing piano from the inside, and I felt like I was in heaven when I heard her playing the piano.
이제 그리고
And then
한 50년이 넘어 지났어요.
about 50 years passed now.
10년 전에
About 10 years ago,
그 장로님 세상을 떠났다.
I heard that elder passed away. I
구미 그 장례식장까지.
went to the funeral place in Gumi,
이 장로교회 장로님이
and he was an elder of a Presbyterian church. There were many members of the Presbyterian church, and I felt kind of awkward to be there. And I prayed, and I came out.
이번에 제가
This time around,
내려가면서
as I was going down to Daegu, I remembered. Oh, he has a daughter, he has a son. If I could meet them, it would be nice, I thought.
오성균 목사님한테 전화를 해가지고
So I called Pastor Oh Seung-gyun in Kimcheon.
그 혹시 지자교회 가서
Uh,
장로님께 아는 사람 집소 좀 달라고.
if there's anyone who knows the address of the elder in Jija Church, please give it to me. I asked Pastor Oh Seung-gyun.
며느리가
And the daughter-in-law of the Jija Church, she was still coming to the church.
남편 세상을 떠났다 그러더라고요.
And apparently the son passed away, and the daughter-in-law is still coming to the Jija Church.
이제 서울에 있는 그 딸이
And the daughter is in Seoul now.
내가 그때 고등학교 학생이었는데
She was a high school student.
저에게 통화가 돼서
But last night I could talk to him.
안 그래도
But the daughter was saying anyway,
자매를 만났는데
she met one of the sisters who was coming to our church,
그러고 있다.
and she was trying to come to our church.
이제 서울에 가서 이제 만나 며느리 되는 분은 어제 좀 나왔으면 좀 다른 순서에서 뭐뭐 다음에 한번 만나기 원했는데
And I was going to meet the daughter-in-law of the elder later.
내가 사는 삶 속에
In the life that I'm living, I can see how God is protecting me, and He is helping me and guiding me.
너무 감사.
It is so obvious, and I'm so thankful about it.
2020년 됐을 때
In year 2020, that's last year,
미국 뉴욕에서 우리 CLF를 하려고
in New York, United States, we prepared to organize CLF, but 4 days before,
주지사가
the governor of New York State,
200명 이상 되는 모든 집회를
he
금지한다.
banned all the meeting with more than 200 participants, but we were expecting about 3,000 participants, so we had to postpone the event. We had to come back to Korea, and we had to organize our program on the Easter day.
이제 우리는 그 대면에 온라인으로 했는데
We did it online,
매 시간 200만
but in
명.
each session of our program, about 2 million people they joined us, and I was very surprised.
그리고 그때 브라질에 내가
And also in
전화를
Brazil,
했는데
I saw one picture of Brazil.
브라질은 코로나로 죽은 사람이 참 많아요. 요즘
There were so many people who died in Brazil. I heard that this time around in Brazil, about 3,000 people they die.
병원에 딱 들어가면은
But when you go to Brazil,
거의 죽어요.
most of them they would die.
살아나온 사람도 드물게 있긴 하지만
Barely there are people who live there, but they would die. So without being able to see
사랑하는 아들이나 딸이 병원에 입원했거나
when their parents, one of their family member, if their parents or children get hospitalized, they don't get to see them. But because if they are hospitalized, they cannot see them, so they would cry with their hands up on their knees.
그래서 우리가 해마다 5월 달하고 10월 달에
So each year, every year, as we are having this Grand Bible Seminar,
대전도 집회를 시작했는데
last year we had Grand Bible Seminar, and
많은 사람들이 복음의
all those people who are dying, we preached the gospel of message of salvation to them who are dying.
276개의 방송국이 중계했어요.
But 276 broadcasting stations, they televised this event that we had organized.
시청자가 예를 들어 말하자면
And for example,
10만 명이라 그래도
if
숫자인데
a broadcasting station has a viewership of 100,000, that's a lot. But when we calculated the total viewership, it was about 1 billion people who had heard our sermon. Then
그 9시간짜리를
I
11시간
I gave 11 sermons of 90 minutes then,
555개
and in fall
방송국이 중계를 해줬어요.
I preached the word. In fall time, 655 broadcasting stations, they televised our words, our sermons. And this time, in the States alone, about 150.
이분들 뭐 이런 뭐 우리 메시지도 내 주일 낮 예배만 현재 듣는 사람 8천만 명이 듣는다.
There are about, even our Sunday worship, about 80 million people, they hear our sermons every week, every Sunday morning.
원래 그 사이에
So last year, this year, between these 2 years, there are a total of 620,000 pastors who want to work with us. And in order to train them, we have opened this theology school in New York. And so far, 8,000 pastors, they have joined our school and they want to study in our school.
이런 일들은 나로 상상할 수
So these are something we had never imagined by ourselves. We could never imagine by ourselves.
하나님께서
God,
우리 속에 살아서 일을 하는데
as He's working alive in us,
이제 그 하나님의 마음을 성경이 읽으면은
when we read out the heart of God, we can see that.
하나님의 마음하고 하나로 합쳐지면
So when your heart becomes one with the heart of God,
여러분 하나님과 하나가 되면 놀라운 것이
if you become one with God, it will be amazing.
어려울 때 곤고할 때 힘들 때 고통 늘 하나님이 같이 마음에 계셔서
Whenever you have difficulties,
일을 하는 거예요.
you'll be able to see God working, and it will be amazing.
제가 생각해 보면
When I think about this,
지금 얘는 돈 한 푼도 없는데
although I have nothing now,
어떤 집 건물 가서 내가 하나님의 종인데
going to a certain house and say, "Oh, I'm a man of God, and I need this house to do the work of God. Please give this house to me." If I say so, they'll call me crazy probably.
저도 지금 그렇게 하면 못할 것
So I think if someone tells me to do that now, I don't think I could do that.
기도했는데
So I pray to God, God, please take care of this to me. So I pray to God, and God gave me the heart that He will do it for me.
가깝게 지냈어요.
So I was very close to with the elder.
세상 떠나 10여 년 되셨고
It's been almost 10 years since he passed away,
그리고 이제 그 딸이
and his
이제 서울에
daughter.
와서 그 딸하고 연락해서 만나려고 해요.
And if he comes back up to Seoul, I think I probably see him again.
제가 하는 일들 보면서 하나님
Anyway, when I see the work that I do, God is always opening the way for us.
좋은 일만 어떤 어려운 일도
It's not only happy things that happen, but there are difficulties that happen too.
만일 여러분 요셉이 감옥에 안 갔으면
If Joseph had not gone to prison,
감옥에 안 갔으면
if he had not gone to prison,
맡은 가면 꿈해서 못했지.
he would have not been able to translate the dream of the chief butler, right?
되지 않았을
Then he wouldn't have been the
그런데 7년 왔다 7년 6년
he wouldn't have been the governor, and people would have died in those 7 years of famine, and people would have all died without Joseph.
그러니까 하나님께서는
So God,
제가 사는 삶을 사는 동안에
while I'm living this life that I'm living,
내가 하나님을 위해 섬기고 복음 위해 사는 동안에
while I'm living for the gospel and serving God,
적은 많은 문제들이 있어요.
there are ups and downs and there are big and small problems.
근데 하나님을 사랑하는 자 곧 그 뜻대로 부르심을 입은 자
But as the Bible said, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to to His purpose. So God always look after us. He helps us, and He works through us. We can clearly see that.
저들이 현재 하고 있는 일
The work that we are currently doing, this work,
이제 저희들이 큰 이제 전쟁이 일어났는데 무슨 전쟁이
we have a
일어났는데
big war that's going on, right? What war is that? Everybody says that we are a sinner, but we say that we are righteous, right? So humanistically thinking, this seems impossible. We sin every day, and I sin every day. How can I say that I'm righteous? It makes no sense. If God says you are righteous, then we are righteous, nothing more. And if God says that we are a sinner, then we are a sinner. But if God says we are righteous, then we are righteous. There are many churches around the world who are flowing fleshly, having faith in God. It's true there are times when our heart does not flow one another, but God will do this for us. Even if in the midst of Corona, I can see how God is working through us, and we're so thankful about it. In year 2001, we founded this Gracias Choir. Why did it start Gracias Choir? Because we organized IYF starting from 1995. In 2001, we officially founded IYF, although we worked before then. Many college students, they came to meet together. But among those students, there are many students whose parents had divorced. As they're living together, sometimes they would go through difficulties and get divorced. And when the parents get divorced, those who get the biggest damage is the children. So who are the children who are living with those parents?
학생들이 대학생에 와서 웃고 즐기고 하다가 무언가 얼굴에 검은 그림자가 있는데 보면은 부모님 이혼한 아이들이 많아요.
So as we live our lives, when I see them, there's the kids because their parents got divorced. I could see there was this shade on their face. Divorce rate is very high now in Korea. I think people when they get married, they are already preparing to get divorced. Apparently, there are many people who are living like that. They have their own bank account and they're ready. They leave this separate source of income, and they keep the monies apart, and they're ready to get divorced anytime. And when their parents get divorced, and when their parents, one of their parents get married again, and when they leave their stepfather or stepmother, it really breaks their heart, and they feel so offended, and they get wounded in their hearts. So when I saw them, what I thought about was that when the parents get divorced, as children live with them, they have the sadness and their broken hearts. How can I comfort them? And as I saw them, I made up my heart to found this Gracias Choir. Although they cannot express that all, maybe some of you too. Maybe some of your parents might have divorced. Maybe because you don't express it all, so we don't know. But anyway, in their hearts, some people there's some students who try to kill their stepfather or stepmother. So they're living in their deep, despair and conflict. So how can we free them from their conflict?
그래서 우리가 이제 합창단을 만들었는데
So I made this
이
choir.
합창단이 그 지휘자가 좋은 사람이 없었어요.
There was no
저희들이 그
conductor.
제가 합창단 러시아에서 상페트르부르크 데려가서
So we brought our choir to St. Petersburg,
성악 지도를 받게 됐어요.
and we let our choir be guided, educated by the professors there. And we got closer to the music conservatory in St. Petersburg. And from time to time, whenever we have an event, we ask them to send us a conductor. And there was a young conductor named Anton. He was good at it.
그리고 나한테 얼마 지난 뒤에
And after some time,
우리가 저 뭐야 호주 오페라 하우스에서 공연이 있는데
we had a performance in Opera House in Australia, and we had no conductor. Then
안토니아 사람 올줄 알고 다른 사람 보리스 아발리안
we were expecting to see Anton, but someone else came. His name was Boris Abalian.
보리스 아발리안 분이 그분이 와가지고
This man named Boris Abalian, he came, and he asked the choir to sing Do, and they sang Do.
도 하니까 그건 도가
And
아니다.
they sang Do. They say it was not Do.
합창단 전부 다 기절할 뻔.
The choir was surprised when because they sang Do, but the conductor was saying that it was not Do. So did we say me or something? Why is he saying that it is not Do? So then when I talked to the chief of the orchestra, who's my daughter, then she said, "Father, I'm going to get scolded. I'm going to get scolded by the conductor, Boris Abalian." Usually, when they sing Do, the cycle should be 444 or something, right? As you are in music school, you know what that means, right? So they should have the frequency, the cycle of should be 444. But if it's not sharp enough, sometimes it'll go like 442, 440. La should be 442. But sometimes it'll go like 442, 441. So it'll vary. So as Dr. Verse Abalian came, it wasn't La, it wasn't 442, but it was 444. So it was not proper, though, he said. So as that was well trained, our choir was renewed. So year 2009, in Jeju International Choir Competition, we got the grand prize. In Busan International Chamber Choir Competition, we got the grand prize. So it was domestic competition. But 2014, in Liberal Garda in Italy, we got the grand prize. And in Swiss Montreux Choir Competition, in mixed choir, we got grand prize as well. In 2015, in Mark Overdorf in Germany, we got grand prize as well. So far, we are recognized as world's best choir. So many presidents, they requested us to start this music school in their country. There are many presidents who requested us to start music school. Yeah, we want to start music school around the world. And as you're studying music, you are doing, as you're singing, maybe you will be professors in music. Now there are many presidents. There are many presidents. They requested me to start this music school. In hundreds of countries, we're going to start this music school. That's our plan. As you know, well, the president of Eswatini, the king of Eswatini, the king is very close to me. You know what happened? The president, when our student went to Eswatini, they went there to do the volunteer work. When we went there, they had national graduation ceremony in the national university. So two of our sopranos, they went.
노래 불러주러 왔어요. 그래서
So they went there to the graduation ceremony and they said, "Oh, we will sing. We want to sing. We want to sing for the graduation." Then they said, "No, you cannot sing in our graduation ceremony.
어제 프로그램을 다 짜가지고
It has already been reported to the king, and he looked yeah, he's seen the program, so no one can change his program."
그래서 너희들
So our volunteers went there. They wanted to sing for them, but because it was not originally included in the program, so they couldn't let them sing. And they said, "Okay, it's okay. We'll just take a look at this graduation ceremony and we'll go back later."
안 오셨고 청
But then they came back again to them and said, "Oh, the king is not around, and
몇곡할 거
he maybe before he comes, you can perform maybe for us." So how many pieces should we sing? They said 3 pieces. So when they were going through when they're going through the halfway through the first song, that's when the king came,
세 곡을 했어요.
and they sat down, and the king came, and they could safely end the graduation ceremony.
졸업식 마치고 난 뒤에 왕때
When the ceremony ended, the king called up 2 students who sang, and the king asked, "Where are you from?" "We're from South Korea. We're a student from music school. We came to do volunteer work here."
그 이야기만 하고 무슨 얘기? 우리 그 설립자 목사님 박옥수 목사님인데
So our founder pastor is Pastor Ock Soo Park, and
그래 이 국왕님이 우리 음악 학교 학생 너무 좋아서
because the king, he liked our students so much, he wanted to talk to us. When I got down at Eswatini airport,
국왕폐하께서
the king
장관을 보내가지고
he sent one of the ministers and told them to bring Pastor Ock Soo Park. The minister of the king came and said,
명령으로 당신을
by order of our highness, I came to escort you. I never imagined that something like that would happen. I never imagined that would happen.
그래서 입구에 딱 서니까
So when I stood right there,
국왕 계시고
the king was here,
오는데 다 끝나서 국왕 앞에 가지고 들어오면 다 기어서 와.
and they were all crawling to come. That's how the rules were. I was about to crawl as well, but they told me not to. The chief secretary said, "Pastor, foreigners they don't have to crawl. This is the rule." Okay then.
들어와서 인사하고 하는 동안에 한
So as we went there to greet, 10 minutes passed.
내가 장관에게 물어봤어요. 국왕하고
So I asked the king, "How many minutes do I have?" "You have over 40 minutes."
10분이 지나갔으니까
About 40 minutes passed.
가지고 복음을 딱 30분 딱 돼서 복음이 끝이 났어요.
About after I preached for 30 minutes and the gospel, I was able to explain the gospel.
어제 쳐다보고
The king was staring at me.
저는 그때
So then
눈을 맞출 수가 없어요.
I couldn't look into his eyes.
그래 30분 동안 말씀을
For 30 minutes I preached the word, and when I ended it was about after 40 minutes. These majesties said, "Oh, pastor, please preach more for me." So I preached for another 30 minutes.
목사님 말씀 더 듣고 싶으면 좀 더 전해 주십시오. 그래 30분 3번 90분을 복음을 딱 구원을 받으셨어요.
So I preached for 30 minutes and 3 times like that, and the king eventually received salvation. And then the king told me, "Oh, pastor, you are the true man of God.
내가 땅을 더 줄 테니
I'll give you a land," he said.
여기다 센터를 지어서
"So please build your center here.
그리고
And then
목사님 집도 지어서
you can build your own house too.
호텔에 주무시지 마세요.
Please don't sleep in the hotel, but sleep in the center."
그 땅을 15,000평을 줬는데
And he gave us a
우리 그
big chunk of land.
떨어진 곳에 줬어요. 제가 광대하게
It was kind of far from the downtown,
차가 없기 때문에
and we told them, "Oh, actually, our Av student they don't have a car. So if you give us the land which is far from the downtown, they cannot come. So please give us land near the downtown." So he gave us 5 hectares of land in the downtown. The land was so good. It was very. There were many wood. There were many trees on the land.
깎아가지고
So
센터
we thought of cutting down the wood and building our centers and schools and building our houses. But the land was so good. So it was difficult for us to
속에다가
see
축구장도 만들고
if you could give us another 5 hectares of land. We'll build the wedding ceremony center. We'll build our center. We'll do all this. So eventually, the king gave us 10 hectares of land. It was his personal property, but he gave it to us.
공사 한참 시작하고
So we are undergoing the construction now.
못 가면 이제 가면
Although we cannot go there right now because of COVID, but we're very close to the king.
제가 이제 한 번은 외국 갔다 오는데 구황폐하께 제가 얘기
Once I went abroad,
한국에 치료를 받으러 오셨어요.
and the Queen Mother, she came.
근데 이제 제가 들어가려고 하니 그 담당자 책임자가 대사인데 안 된다고
The
들어갔어요.
when I came to see the Queen Mother, the ambassador, he was the person in charge. He stopped us not to go in.
그 이제 그 환영식인데 나는 그 외국 갔다 온 환영식 못 들어 밖에 있었는데.
But I just came back from foreign countries. I couldn't get in there. But the Queen knew me pretty well, so
대사 좀 만났어요.
I went to see the Queen, and
내가 구황폐하께 나 여기 와서 부모님
the ambassador stopped me from going to see the Queen Mother. So I told the ambassador, if you let me go in to see the king, then I'll report it to the king because you stopped me from going to see the Queen Mother. I couldn't see the Queen Mother. So the Queen Mother came to Korea,
수행원이 70명이 왔어요.
and there were 50 people came to assist the Queen Mother because the Queen Mother came to Korea for the treatment. And all those 70 people, they were waiting for the Queen Mother on the aisle of the hotel all day long. So I told the king,
우리 교회 좋은 의사가
we have good doctors in our country, in our house, in our church. With your permission, your Highness, we would let our
만족들만 치료해드리겠습니다.
we would let our
너무 좋아. 그래서 의사 5명이 간호사
member,
왔어요.
the doctors of our church to treat your royal family.
막 치료해도 그렇게 했던
And-
만족들도 치료 너무 좋아. 그래 2년 했는데
So we treated them,
하려고 코로나 때문에 못 가고 올해
and we wanted to do it last year, but we couldn't.
또 이제 우리가 그런 일 하면서 왕초도 가까워지고 우리 일할 수도 그렇게 하는 길을 여시는 거예요.
God opened the way for us, and it was so good.
어쨌든 작년 코로나로 말미암아
Anyway, because last year things were so difficult because of COVID-19, many people were dying.
마지막 죽음 앞에 설 때
But right before their death, what they're afraid of is sin.
보통 교회는 죄 사함을 정확히 모르기 때문에
Because most people, they don't know the forgiveness of sin well in the church, so they always call them sinners.
우리가 죄 사함 받고 난 너무너무
But after receiving forgiveness of sin, they were so
이런
happy.
복음을 전 세계에 깜짝깜짝
They were so amazed to preach this gospel.
동아일보하고 인터뷰했는데 동아일보 속사더라고요. 왜 다른 교회 목회자는 다 박 목사님 좋아하시는데 한국에서 이다이라
Many people they like you, but why other people around in Korea they don't like Pastor Ock Soo Park?
교단은
There was a big denomination in Taiwan. A little while ago, we had a meeting with them, and also in Indonesia, 18 pastors. We had a video chatting with them, and they want to work with us. So there are many people like that in our church nowadays. So it is not us doing it, but we can see how God is helping us in all we are doing.
여러분이 하는 일들은 항상
Things that we do, there are times when things are not
하나님
good enough.
보시는 일은
The work that God does for us, there are difficulties that happen, and difficulties come,
하나님께서 정확하게 우리 이끌어 주기 때문에
but because God leads us and helps us.
정말 그 요셉이 피난 저뭐 애굽에 팔려가도 한 보디발 종살이 해도 그 다음에 그 보디발의 모함을 받아 감옥에 가도 술 마든 간에 꿈을 해석해도 떡분야 꿈을 해석해주고 결국은
Although Joseph went to prison, but he interpreted the dreams of the chief butler, and he got chosen, and they were able to save up some crabs for the famine, and they were able to survive the 7 years of famine.
고향 있는 부모나
And during that period of time, their families and they were living in their hometown, they couldn't help but to die. But through Joseph being a slave in Egypt, he could save their family. So for those who are called by God, everything works together for good.
보면 우리 교회 때로 어려운
So when I see, it is true, there are difficulties time to time, but I can see how God helps us.
우리
And although there were difficulties and problems, although there are many people who died before, but as we live together, there are problems that occur because of difficulties. There are so many problems that happen. After receiving the forgiveness of sin, it seems like there are times when the difficulties come, there are times when the hardship comes, but God helps us in everything. Not after I being in prison. When I went to the military service, my pair of gloves disappeared. In the army base, I have to steal it myself too. That's how I thought. I have no other choice, I thought. But one day, as I thought about, I may not get caught as I steal the pair of gloves, but if I get caught, what am I going to do? I've been in prison for I've been in the military for 28 years, 28 months. But during my service of 28 months in military, I was always happy because Jesus helped me along. But the most important thing for me in military was to preach the gospel. When I preached the gospel, I was so happy and I gained strength in my heart. There was a space called telecommunication center. I went there and I learned to send Morse code. I was wireless signal. I was a signal man. The 300 up to 310th class they were in Daejeon. But from 111th class they moved to Wonju. So and I was in 311th class. So I had no boss. I had no higher rank soldiers in our class because all my bosses they were in Daejeon and we moved to Wonju. So back then there were so many soldiers who ran away from the military base. So we had to pair up and move only in the groups of 3. So whenever the sun set, we had to move in a group of 3. But even so, people they ran away. So once, so there were some rules in our base that if you don't salute your boss, then you cannot sleep. If you smoke in front of your boss, you'll not be able to walk on your feet. There were some rules like that in our base, and we were the we had the highest ranking, highest class in our base. So we had no boss. So during 29 months of our military life, we could preach the gospel for 29 months of our lives. If this God is with us, we would be able to live in the Sahara Desert, I thought. So it seems like we are going through difficulties. But if you look in closely, you can see how God is helping us. And if you believe God who helps us, you'll be able to walk along with God. Although Apostle Paul went through many difficulties and problems, but you were able to save many people and you were able to do great works. And as you grow, as you walk along with this God, no matter what happens, you'll be able to see the hand of God working and you'll be able to receive grace from God. After being discharged from military base, now I'm old. Although I thought I would only live up to 60 years old because back then the average lifespan was low. But even when I became 60 years old, I didn't die. So I think I could maybe live up to 80 years old, I'm not sure. But if I don't die at the age of 90, then I'll maybe live up to 100 years old. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to live until Jesus comes. But it's true, there are times when I'm going through difficulties and hardship. But I can see how those things work together for good. As you put your heart together for the Lord and work together, no matter what happens, God will bless you. And He'll bestow His grace upon us, I believe. As Paul went to Asia Minor and Macedonia to preach the gospel, and he went to Europe and he went to preach the gospel in Rome. He preached the gospel in Rome, and back then Rome was he was able to preach the gospel worldwide. And back then the gospel came through the American missionaries. And there are many places still which don't have the gospel. But as we're preaching the gospel around many cities, I believe that God will be happy with us. And no matter what we do, He will help us, I believe. And we can see how God is helping us. I hope that if you do the work that which pleases God, God will bestow His grace upon you too. Thank you very much. Let us pray.